What is up, everyone? It is a Monday afternoon, and that's an odd time to be joining you if you're watching this live. But we have to talk about last night's AEW Revolution pay-per-view and see what you all think. I'm going to go through a very quick version. We didn't go live on our show last night, so this is a very condensed, short Two Bros Wrestling Show Revolution review. We had our preview last week. Doug and I predicted 7 matches. There was 8 on the main card itself. Let's start with the first, though. Jericho versus Starks. Nice opener. Not sure that the JAS being banned from ringside was a needed stipulation since Guevara ended up getting involved anyway, but this was a correct call as far as winners go. If you haven't seen it, now we're getting into spoiler territory. Just FYI, for the rest of the show, we're going to talk winners and losers. Starks goes over here. Doug and I both predicted this one correctly. Next match was Jack Perry versus Christian Cage, and I'm glad we can say Jack Perry now and not have to go just Jungle Boy, right? It's better to actually have a name. Doug and I did not predict this match because it was added after the filming of our last week's show. As far as the match itself goes, it was in some ways a long time coming, and I think that might have, for me at least, affected the way I viewed this contest. First off, I guess WWE must have trademark on Buried Alive or a casket match because this was called like the Final Burial or something, but this was a casket match, so odd naming here. And then there's the odd timing of it. This feud at one point in time was a really one of the hottest things that AEW had going, and it was obvious that Christian Cage was preparing Jack Perry for the next step of his journey and getting him over. Then an unfortunately timed injury, nothing that can be done about that, but an unfortunately timed injury for Christian means that this blow-off match didn't come until months after the feud really had died way down. But just like with the Starks victory I just spoke of, the winner was the correct choice here, that being Jack Perry going over the veteran. And just like Jericho did for Starks, Christian Cage put over the younger talent. The right thing to do in this situation. Both Perry and Starks are the future of AEW. Next, we're going to talk 6-man championships where the Elite took on the House of Black. Now, I am not a fan of the 6-man titles. I've mentioned that on our show before. I'm not a fan of 6-mans in general, as they tend to break down into spot fest that lack a lot of internal logic to the flow of the match. And in fairness, this one did that as well, but not to the extreme that sometimes you'll see. And also, there was just way more of a natural story and fit with these two teams being 3-man factions, that the two of them made great opponents, and obviously the talent in the ring can do the heavy lifting here. And even when they did break into chaos, the action was never anything less than breathless and well executed, and the crowd ate it up, which added to it as well. And House of Black won here, and that means they are your new 6-man tag team champions. Doug and I both got this one wrong, as I thought we would not have a title change this soon into these two teams finally getting together and hitting it off. To that end, I guess I would say the follow-up here is what I'm more interested in now that we have the match, is that where does the Elite go from here? Do the Young Bucks go back to the tag team division and Kenny Omega go back to being a singles competitor, put him in the world title scene? And then who does the House of Black have to go against? I'm not sure a lot of folks are clamoring for like House of Black Dark Order matches. No offense to Dark Order or Best Friends or anything along those lines. It's, again, the problem I have with the 6-man titles. It just seems like an unnecessary championship. The match itself, though, exceeded my expectations, and also the only match I got wrong tonight. Not Doug. We'll get into that, though, in a second. Next match, Jamie Hayter defended her women's Championship against Saraya and Ruby Riott. Now we're getting into where Doug and I actually disagreed when predicting. One of the only matches that Doug and I did not agree on. And Doug, sorry, you got this one wrong. I got it right. Jamie Hayter retained. I think that this was it was good. It wasn't great, but it served its purpose. I think that it was the best Saraya performance since she has made her return. It looked like some of the ring rust was finally coming off. And you don't want to call somebody out on that, especially considering all she came through and overcame just to get back into the ring. But it is what it is, and she hasn't necessarily had that signature moment yet that made people remember the old version of Paige. This match did. She looked really good in it. Jamie Hayter winning is the right choice. This is why I picked her. The fans are really into Hayter. It is not time for her to lose that title yet. The biggest thing coming out of this match probably is the post-match, and that was the fact that after a tease saying otherwise, Ruby Soho had enough and turned heel and actually joined Saraya and Toni Storm. So it looks like Hayter's next opponent is going to be a heel Ruby Soho. We'll see how that goes, and if that's a short-term thing, and she goes on then to get Saraya as well as Toni Storm back in the mix, or where this ends up. I think Hayter's going to have a long reign, though, that will not end, as I said on our preview show, until Britt Baker turns on her, and then we have that match. That's the money match in my mind. Moving on to one of the more anticipated matches of the entire evening, and that was the Texas Death Match between Hangman Page and Jon Moxley. Folks, this was gruesome. We called it. We knew it would be gruesome. Everyone who enjoys this style of wrestling probably got all the violence they could handle, and then maybe some. Those that do not appreciate this style of wrestling probably thought it was overkill and more than that they wanted to see. It really does depend on the style of wrestling that you enjoy. This card had a little bit of everything for the different types of wrestling fans, which is something that JR had called out in advance. But yeah, this was everything you could have wanted and expected from a Texas death match. Brutal. The fork spots especially looked particularly nasty, and just the digging in on those forks and barbed wire, just the total bloodbath. It went down as Doug and I predicted it would, and that is with Hangman coming out on top and moving forward as likely the next contender for your world champion. I don't want to spoil that until we get to the main event. But yes, again, your mileage is going to vary on this one. If you like hardcore, it was a near classic. If you don't like hardcore, it was probably something that you went and made your sandwich or whatever while this was on your screen. We had to have a come down match after all that blood and violence, and that's kind of unfortunate because Samoa Joe versus Wardlow for the TNT Championship was good, but on a card that was this stacked, it just simply didn't stand out for me. And not everything can stand out when you're talking a 4-hour pay-per-view, and this was one of those matches that fell victim to that. Right booking decision, though, in that Wardlow is your new TNT champion. I don't know that AEW liked the fact that Joe was so over with the crowd. Joe is the obvious heel in this feud, yet the Joe chants showed that the crowd, no matter how Joe is positioned, loves them some Samoa Joe. But I do think Wardlow has a lot of potential. Hopefully this stops the hot potato on this title. Let Samoa Joe go off, do his Ring of Honor thing, be an anchor of that new restarted promotion, and let's see what Wardlow can do with a championship and a long run as a champion here. Next match did not recover the momentum that Samoa Joe and Wardlow lost. I do think that there was a dip in the overall energy in the building and in the pay-per-view itself during this section of the pay-per-view, and that was the tag team title match where the Guns, they managed to retain their championship against the Acclaimed, Jarrett and Lethal, and Orange Cassidy and Danhausen. One of only two matches, again, that Doug and I disagreed upon, and just like in the women's match that I mentioned earlier, I am happy to point out that my prediction was correct and that the Guns retain. Doug was wrong once again, as he often, so very often is. This was just too much. Didn't need to be a four-man, too many participants, zaniness, comedy, too many moving parts for it to really gain any foothold. I guess the really big news in this one is that the champs retain and are going to probably move on to a more meaningful program with FTR, who made their surprise return at the end of this match. That's one I would actually look forward to. But for now, the Guns' surprising title reign continues. Where does the Acclaim go from here, though? One of the most over teams in AEW, and one of the emerging stories of the last year was the Acclaim's rise. And now they appear to be not in the world title hunt, at least for the moment. So how do we book them from here on out? Let us know what you think in the comments. And that brings us to the match that I was really dying to get on here and talk about the most. And that is the 60-minute Iron Man world title match with MJF defending that championship against the great Bryan Danielson. I have stipulated on here many times in the past, I love Iron Man matches. I love Iron Man matches. One of my favorite gimmick matches in all of wrestling when they are done well. One of the reasons I love Iron Man matches is that they spit in the face of our TikTok culture with short attention spans. It values art over instant satisfaction, and therefore Iron Man matches are for the hardcore fans. If you really get into an Iron Man match, you're a true hardcore fan. It's not out to please you. You know going in that you have to dedicate 60 minutes of your time. Again, we're in short attention span era now, but Iron Man matches emphasize art over the lack of substance that so often defines our entertainment these days. It's the same reason I love, double albums, and that I love long movies and in-depth comprehensive articles. It's just, there's something about if you give yourself too challenging material and it is done well, it rewards you. I love the ambition. That's what they set out to do with this, and that is produce an ambitious match. Mark it down. This will be something that could stand comfortably alongside Brett and Shawn, WrestleMania, Angle Samoa Joe and TNT, Angle Lesnar on SmackDown back in the early 2000s, AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels back from TNA, CM Punk versus Chris Hero from Ring of Honor. I'm thinking of like the greatest of the Iron Man matches. This was also a 60-minute Iron Man match. And over time, because again, we have short attention spans, promoters have really done a disservice to the Iron Man gimmick by reducing them to 30 minutes, sometimes even in some instances shorter than that, so that falls happen in a fashion that's not even believable in order to get what would normally be a 60-man into a compressed period of time. They went full-on 60-minute Iron Man match, and because of that, they had to rely on strategy, telling a story that engaged the audience. It never once felt slow in the entire 60 minutes. It had drama, great heel work throughout by MJF, an announced team selling it like it was the greatest thing on earth. It had a countdown clock when you got to the final 3 minutes. You had cheating. You had the technical mastery that you would expect from Bryan Danielson. You had some well-placed high spots. You had some blood and brutality. And you basically had every kind of wrestling performance you want, well-paced throughout, with a clock showing the urgency. And I loved every bit of it. I loved Tony Schiavone there at the end when we ended up in a draw where he was kind of talking over the other announcers like it was obvious he was communicating with someone in his headset as if this conversation was really happening in real time, giving it a very realistic feel to it. It had a classic sudden death overtime. We get those a lot, but that is probably not surprising that we went there. The fact, though, that everything was so well done up until then makes you forgive the fact that you maybe could have seen that coming, that's where we were going to go. But following MJF being administered oxygen, which was important, this match is restarted. And then the MJF, he wins and retains his belt the only way a heel should at this point in a 60-minute plus contest that went almost 70 minutes, in fact. And that's through cheating Good old school heel cheating when the ref was not looking, and I have zero problem with the ending being a cheat, because that's everything that came before it lets them get away with that ending because of the classic that they had put on in 60 plus minutes of nonstop action that by the last 15, 20 minutes had the audience so engaged that they were on their feet and remained on their feet. Long live the Iron Man match. And the right call here, as much as I would love to see Bryan Danielson one day get the AEW title, the right call for MJF to have that title moving forward. I'm going to guess against Hangman Page based on what had happened earlier in the pay-per-view. But what did you think of Revolution? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Leave your comments here in the on the channel and let us know what match you liked the best and what you thought of that Iron Man. And what did you think about the fact that I got 6 of my 7 predictions correct, whereas Doug only managed 4 of his 7 predictions correct, which you know, is actually pretty high for him. He's normally wrong way more often than that. But fans, thanks for tuning in for this quick down and dirty hot takes look at AEW's latest pay-per-view. Go see it. Definitely worth seeing. Maybe skip some time in that next to final hour right before the main event. There's 2 matches there that probably don't need to be reviewed if you want to see this in a quicker fashion. But there's a lot of good on this show other than just the main event, which is definitely a match of the year contender. The Two Bros Wrestling Show will be back at our normal time on Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, live on Facebook, and of course on demand afterwards on both Facebook and our YouTube channels. We are getting into WrestleMania season, and we shift gears from AEW this Sunday to start talking WrestleMania every week up until and including the weekend of the big event itself. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. Join us on Sunday, and we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.